Yeah, so I guess it was a natural progression onto your latest venture, which is Caffe Cino. Really fascinating read, actually. I really enjoyed the. It's a collection of different articles about Caffe Cino and some short plays in the back, some 1-2-handers, some longer ones. So maybe as a way of introduction, you could just have a little read of the last couple paragraphs here in the introduction, because I thought it set the scene quite nicely.
Sure. So yeah, this intro is written by Daniel Talbot, who curated the whole book. He was the sort of guest editor, and together we put all this together. He brought the project to me, and this is part of what he said about the Caffe Cino. So he said, supposedly Joe Cino never read the plays that were put up at the Cino. He trusted the artists that came to him and shared their work. He only wanted to know their zodiac sign and whether or not they came recommended by one of the countless artists and Cino community members he believed in and trusted. He wasn't interested in being a gatekeeper or lavishing his taste in that minuscule yet epic twinkling glitter-fed room. And thanks to the gift of his trust, look at the sheer number of great and drastically unique and individual artists that pissed and drank coffee there. All of that without reading a single play. All of that without him letting us know what a great play looks like, sounds like, is. Joe Cino would stand on stage at the beginning of a performance, ring his bell and shout out, "It's magic time." I hope we captured that in some of these pages.
Brilliant. No, I think you did. I think you did capture the magic of Caffe Cino. It's not something I knew anything about. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what Caffe Cino was. Yeah,
so I mean, it's this kind of sort of remarkable story in that it was only around for a handful of, like a few years in the 60s in New York, downtown in the Village, and it was a coffee shop where they ended up putting on all sorts of plays and happenings and sort of strange things while people would sort of sit and drink coffee. And Joe Cino was the owner who had I think he sort of tried to be a belly dancer or was a ballet dancer or something like that, despite being a sort of kind of stocky, hairy Italian guy with a kind of tempestuous love life and all that. And so I mean, just sort of, just a really fascinating time in New York at that point in the 60s when, there's a lot of, rebellion and excitement happening and lots of people moving to the city because, they wanted to be artists. And this was sort of a place where people could kind of follow that passion. And there's like a lot of, really eccentric characters there, but also kind of launched quite a few people. And that, like, Al Pacino was doing some of his early work there in theatre, and Harvey Keitel, the people like Edward Albee and Sam Shepard and John Guare, all these kind of, like the big sort of writers in sort of 20th century American drama of the second half of the 20th century. They're all kind of sort of hanging out there and drinking coffee and seeing shows and getting to know people and sleeping with people and taking drugs with people and all that. And it's a sort of really wild time, and it only lasted a few years, but its legacy is huge in that, there's, those writers. And then Lanford Wilson, a great American playwright, again, his early plays were all there, and he was very much part of it. And we're lucky enough to have some people involved who were there, Robert Patrick and Maggie Dominic and people in there who were there at the time, giving some sort of, interviews with us or memories of what the place was like. And there's a couple of other essays and interviews of people who know a lot about the history of the Cino and its legacy. But, a lot of the plays are kind of lost that were there. The sort of the record keeping wasn't, there's no sort of databases of sort of exactly what was happening all the time. There are some great people who have archived, as much as they could of sort of posters and the plays that were happening at the time. And some of those plays have now gone on to be sort of done elsewhere and be published and all that. Excuse me. But I mean, it's just, its legacy is so important because it sort of allowed a lot to happen. And it was just part of that kind of thriving scene at the time in New York with places like La Mama and these other exciting sort of downtown theatres where, different stuff was happening and young people were getting a chance because it was, and it's essentially the birthplace of off Broadway. And, the sort of distinction there is that, I mean, really it's by the size of the theatre space. So Broadway's, I think it's something like 500 seats and over, and then off Broadway's, it's at 100, 150 to 499, and then off Broadway is anything beneath that.
Okay, because that was something I wasn't sure about.
Some people think sort of like a geographical thing.
I was thinking geographically, I was thinking, okay, so if Broadway's there, off Broadway must be there, and then off is like around some alleyway, but it's just to do with the size of the venues. I mean,
that's a technical thing, and also some people talk about how it has to be the type of contract as well that's going through the unions, because the off-Broadway theatres, you have to mostly be, union contracts and things like that. So there's a lot of like technical things in there, but the sort of the sense of it is sort of off Broadway is where you can be much more experimental, and it's a lot more kind of just throwing stuff together or trying new things out, and that's kind of a breeding ground for sort of new talent, because it is so expensive in New York, and it always has been, to do theatre. So yeah, a place like Caffe Cino, we're just like, let's just put up on the stage and see what happens. So a big reason that Daniel Talbot came to me with the idea for this book is that he'd been doing the same sort of thing in sort of downtown bars with his company Rising Phoenix Rep, and I got to know Daniel because I interviewed him for the first issue of the Dionysian, and I made a play from him in the second one, and he's just been a great supporter. He liked what we were doing, and because he does that sort of thing, he's published plays, he's produced, he's written, directed, and acted, and he's just sort of one of these kind of one of these guys who just is excited by new stuff and tries to his best to make things happen for people, even though money's tight and all that, and he just has this sort of endless energy. So he kind of came to me saying, let's do this. And so really we've got a mix of sort of stuff about the history of the Chino. We've got sort of stuff about when Daniel did his Chino nights. We sort of revived that idea with new plays in New York. He did this sort of about 10 years ago now, and then he's also been doing more of it recently with university students across the States, reviving the old plays from the original Chino and doing them again with people in the final year at sort of acting school, and working with technicians and designers and people who are all sort of getting to come in on that sort of experience. So yeah, we're kind of publishing a lot of their memories and essays about that time, but also just new plays by American writers who are embodying that kind of spirit of the Caffe Cino. So it's a kind of, in some ways it's sort of an homage to that, and also kind of remembrance of it. We didn't want it to be a sort of dry history book, basically. So there's going to be 3 books, and this is the first one that's just come out now, and 2 more to come in the next sort of year. We're just a real mix of kind of all of that. So there's going to, a chance for people to kind of get to know about that place, but also to be reading new work that's exciting, that sort of gives you a sense of what has been allowed to happen by places like the Caffe Cino that said, let's make new stuff happen. And
how many people do actually know about it? Is it because it's obviously niche for me and for people here, but amongst the community, is it kind of like this folklore thing that people know about, kind of in the background?
To an extent, there's a lot of people who don't know much about it, because it did only last for a few years, and then obviously quite a lot of the people who were involved at the time are now dead or very old, but there's still people who are kind of keeping that the spirit alive of it. And I think it's we want to try and help people remember it or learn about it themselves, because I just was fascinated by the story. There's a couple of books out there about it, but there's not, and there's some good archive stuff online as well, but you can have to sort of look for it a little bit, because it was just such a sort of brief moment in time that the Chino happened, but like so many plays were produced in that time, a crazy amount of plays. Even they're putting on musicals, and they end up being sort of Broadway shows and things later on. So I mean, it's just the sort of the imagination and ambition in that room was kind of amazing. So we kind of just want to pass that on and remind people that's kind of what it's all about, and that's how it all starts, and that hopefully this is something that can happen in the future as well, and it's not just a thing of the past. It's still possible to sort of separate art and commerce and actually just do it because you love it.
Hey, how we doing? I hope you enjoyed this clip. If you did, then please give us a like below. Make sure you've subscribed to us if you haven't already, and please leave us a comment to let us know your thoughts. Thanks very much. Cheers.